So, my first husband, myself, and my two children arrived in England on Boxing Day of 2002. Um, Thereafter, we went and stayed with his parents for a couple of weeks, and him and his mother, I think, managed to sort out a place for us to rent in Ambleside, which is a town just outside Windermere. And so once we actually got to this house, I couldn't work to start off with, being an immigrant. We had a court case, and I was granted leave to remain. Thereafter, I started work in about 2003. I went into hospitality, which for me was quite the sort of thing that South African women don't really go into. Having been in South Africa, and we don't really do domestic sort of work, but I went into that sort of thing because my husband at the time, who had started up a kind of painting and decorating business, kind of terminated that business after a while, and then he was kind of unemployed, and the bills were getting higher, and he just kind of sidestepped all those bills. so I went into domestic work as a in hospitality in Ambleside. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. Domestic workers in South Africa, they often do quite a lot, really. So when I went into this domestic work in Ambleside, I discovered that they're not really that subservient. They do the basics, change the linen, etc. But they do work very hard, very hard. It's back-breaking manual labor, frankly, and you don't really get paid very much for it. Also, you don't get a pension or anything like that, and everyone just kind of takes you for granted. Don't really get appreciated very much. So I worked in this kind of hospitality industry for years. I did various cleaning jobs as well. I cleaned, lavatories, floors, chemist floors, hospital floors, things like that. And I did actually work very hard. I worked my fingers to the bone, frankly. It was back-breaking work, and it was quite subservient. But I didn't really mind doing it because, I was supporting my husband and my children and paying the bills. At one point, I was actually working 5 different jobs. I was getting up at approximately 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was kind of having a shower and getting myself sorted out by about 5 a.m. And then I was getting to work in the morning by about 5:30. Um, and then I would work the entire day at different jobs, different like domestic jobs, until about 10 p.m. at night. And of course, my husband at the time, who eventually got himself a kind of painting and decorating job in a hotel, used to kind of roll out of bed by about maybe 8-ish. I would come back at that point between jobs, make sure my children got off to school, take them off to school, make sure they got changed, sort them out, with clean shoes, etc. Give the dishes a wash and generally clean up, and make sure they ate, etc., get them off to school, and then I would go careering into the next job. And often I used to be a bit late. After having taken my children, to school, because they didn't really like going to school, they used to hang onto the banisters. I would struggle to get them into school in the morning because they didn't really like it there. It was hard, but yeah, we pulled it off. And I afforded the basics. All the bills that had just been sidelined, I found all those bills. I paid most of them, including a bill from for his vehicle, which he had bought off a friend. These friends had moved from a hotel which they owned in Ambleside to France, and they were very nasty. They used to send nasty letters. We used to have these nasty phone calls, and I had to deal with all of this because he didn't have anything to do with it, didn't want anything to do with it, so I would have to deal with all the nastiness. I did actually manage to pay off this bill. Probably cost me in the region of about $2,000 or something. For this vehicle that didn't last very long. It lasted max 3 years, and then the engine dropped out of it and landed on the floor beneath it. Of course, I had to pay for this to be removed and taken off to the local car, kind of where cars go to die. And we didn't really have many vehicles after that. Yeah, we used to kind of walk around most of the time, and if I ever did the shopping, I used to catch a taxi and go and do the shopping and catch a taxi back with all the shopping, which I used to carry in myself and put away. It was quite a kind of back-breaking time. I did manage to get all the council bills paid off. We had a major excess of council bills. Where I did actually manage to get our house reevaluated, so that it kind of went down in kind of whatever class, and we did actually manage to get our council bills down a lot because of that. The rest I paid off. The Alecki bills were his responsibility. Alecki and gas, but he didn't really keep up with that. And when the end of our relationship occurred, he kicked me out of our marital home, and I was unable thereafter to actually complete all the payments. So he was in quite a lot of debt thereafter, which I think he managed to sort out sort of himself. The uh, um, gas company did eventually contact me years after that and ask me to complete the payments, which I did. The rent, on the odd occasion I used to subsidize. I paid the milkman, all the basics, and obviously sorted my kids' school clothes out, etc. Well, at the end of my day, at 10 p.m. at night, after all this, constant job changing during the day, uh, he would be asleep on the sofa or messing around with his sound equipment because he is a musician, and I would then have to make the meal for my children and try to kind of make the meal in a very short period of time before midnight, because these kids would have to get off to bed and be at school in the morning. Yeah, that was not easy, because I did have to wash the dishes afterwards at midnight and clean up the house. Anyway, that lasted for quite some time until one day he decided to come home and bearing a bottle of Bucks Fizz or whatever it was he had at the time. Of course, I was quite happy about this. We used to seldom drink alcohol, and we didn't really have much going in the way of romance at the time. So I was quite excited about this. What followed was not actually very exciting. It was quite horrid, really. He announced that he had met this woman online, this American woman from South Carolina, and she was oh so much better than me, and he was going to spend the rest of his life with this lady. That was a shock, I must admit, because I had actually devoted my entire life to him. I'd given up a musical career because I was originally a Durban musician. After which he actually, but after our marriage, he actually nicked half of my songs and put them online under his name, having sung them himself and rearranged them himself and all right. He just stole the rights. Yeah, that was quite a few songs that he nicked of mine. I did want to use them at some point, but I'll just let him have them. Yeah. So anyway, at that point, he began to slate me to everyone in Ambleside, because I went off the rails. I really did. It knocked me quite hard. Did struggle with that. I'd given birth to his two children in very difficult circumstances. I hadn't actually had local anaesthetics during both births. There were none available. The first birth was particularly hard because at the age of 20, which in South Africa we regard 21 as the age for becoming an adult. I instead of having anesthetics, the midwife slapped me in the face to help me to regain composure. And I gave a very difficult birth to my daughter, who had to be vacuum extracted. And after which the surgeon who had been on duty for 24 hours was unskilled. He also used a scalpel that was blunt and attempted to perform surgery to, facilitate the birth without anesthetics. It was rather like being butchered. It was probably like some kind of like African kind of ritual. Bless him. Anyway, he tried his best, and he kind of patched it together as best as he could. But a couple of months later, I was sitting on the toilet, and a whole like lot of flesh, like chunks of flesh, came out, and there was just like massive lakes of blood everywhere. And it got infected, and I had to, instead of going to the doctor, because we didn't have really much access to the GP, it was quite expensive at the time. I had to pour a full-on bottle of gentian violet straight on this, which was extremely painful, but it was disinfected thereafter. And then 2 years later, I had my son, and the surgeon who was performing the surgery happened to be a genuine surgeon who had actually been trained. She did use a sharp scalpel and repaired the job. So that was kind of all's well that ends well, kind of. It took a while to heal, but it was okay after a while. Yeah. So anyway, after all that, and years and years of working my finger to the bone, paying bills, etc., he just threw me away like a piece of rubbish, which, was quite traumatic at the time, and slated me off to half of his friends in Ambleside, since I'd gone off the rails a bit after those traumatic events. Yes, I did go off the rails quite considerably one particular night when I did get extremely hammered on vodka, as you do, and poured water all over his computer and keyboard, and trashed his guitar like a rock star, as you do, and wrote "you cunt" in curry sauce all over the wall. Being slightly traumatized. Thereafter, he did come home. I argued with him. I smashed the bottle of Wicked, and thereafter stepped straight in it, cutting my foot straight up. And I had to thereafter be rushed to a hospital in an ambulance. I did cry in the ambulance, but it wasn't because of the bottle that had actually gone straight up my foot. It was because I was extremely heartbroken. When I got to the hospital, I was still in tears, extremely heartbroken. And the nurse actually came up to me and said, are you in pain? Do you need anesthetics? I said no, because it is not the pain that's bugging me. It's the heartache. Anyway, after that experience and after major surgery on my foot, I still do, on the odd occasion, feel the slight, reverberations of that, but it's not really major. It's kind of healed fully. The surgeons were good. Um, I did actually get back on crutches. Um, my ex had to go to work the next morning, and I walked into the room bearing crutches, after which he seized up in total fear, thinking that I was going to whack him over the head with them. I didn't. I was just merely waking him up in time for work, since I did actually still care at that point. Thereafter, the man left for the United States, bearing gifts bought by yours truly on the final salary that I had at the time, after I had left my jobs due to traumatic events. I fortunately did have enough to feed my children and myself and his friend that he had asked if he could remain in the house for a couple of weeks. But then I had no money left after that, because he had actually spent all of it on airfare going to see his wonderful American wife. And I had actually spent the rest of my cash feeding my children and myself and looking after the house. Thereafter, he kicked me and his friend out on the streets, as you do. And after he had, used us as stepping stones, and wouldn't let us back in, wouldn't let me back in. So I just ended up going to this man's establishment that I'd worked for. I ended up really crying myself quite chronically on a bench. He heard me, he came outside, he offered me a place to stay. I stayed there for a couple of weeks. Then because he was closing down the establishment for winter, said, well, I've got to go. He's got nowhere else for me to stay. So I bought myself a tent from a local tent company, along with a little, gas stove, etc. Like a petrol thing, and headed up for the hills in Lothrig, where I spent my Christmas. Yes, I spent my Christmas on Lothrig Fell that year. My son came to briefly visit me in the tent. I did give him what little I had at the time, as a Christmas present. I did actually manage to get myself another job thereafter. I managed to get myself a job in the then Apple Pie in Ambleside, which is a bakery. A very nice chap called Simon actually offered me a place to stay in the work digs. So I once again had a place to sleep. But before then, as I was staying up on Lothrig, and after I had visited the house again to see my children, after which I had found my daughter wandering around aimlessly looking for parents, he did actually impart 20 quid to me, saying that that would possibly get me a night in a hotel or something, backpackers, I spent the night in Backpackers Hotel in Ambleside, where I met this dangerous sex offender called Simon Evans. Simon Evans followed me up to Loughrig, and thereafter concluding that I was suffering from some kind of like fatigue or exhaustion or cold or something like that, decided to haul me off to the police station. Thereafter, the police decided to send me to the hospital, where I got free food for a short period before they kicked me out of the hospital because they needed a bed for someone to sleep in. And I had given my tent to this other chap, so I had no tent to sleep in then. So they told me that I either had to choose to take a train ticket bought by them down to this Simon Evans, his house in Surrey, or the other option, of course, was to be on the streets of Ambleside again, this time with nothing. No food, no income, nothing. So naturally, I did make the other decision. You know, considering that I didn't really want to starve or be out in the cold for the winter. So yeah, I headed down to Surrey, where I spent a couple of months with this sex offender. He did actually rape me. I didn't actually tell the police about that because, you know, I didn't want to get the man into too much trouble, because he was actually one of those chaps that have those little black books with lots of handshake men. So I didn't want to really get him into trouble, because I naturally thought that might be unforeboding for myself. So anyway, the police in Surrey sent me back to Ambleside on a train. When I got off the train, I was in the middle of nowhere. Once again, I was in dire straits. I headed back to Ambleside, where I did actually manage to meet this other chap, Jock, who had a house at that point. They'd given him a council house, and I did actually stay there for a couple of days. After which, I once again, I did actually approach the Apple Pie, and they gave me accommodation in the workdicks. So yes, at that point, I was actually working extremely hard, cleaning the Apple Pie on my own with no help. At night, I was cleaning floors that were very very hard to clean. It was backbreaking work, and toilets, etc. And I was doing it on my own. There were actually no other staff members. There was also stairs that had been covered with fluids, which I could have possibly fallen down, broken my neck, and then there would have been no one available to help me. But fortunately, that did not occur. That's why I'm here. I did survive that. After a while, this Australian woman moved into the accommodation that I was staying in. Her name was Joanne. She kind of came off the streets of Ambleside. I did befriend her. She appeared to be quite a nice person, but she later was responsible for burglaring my house. She did actually steal jewelry to the value of quite a lot from my house. And this had been something which my mother had actually melted down. She'd melted down her marriage ring from her first marriage and made these things specifically for my brother, myself, and his girlfriend. She did actually steal this. Without apologizing, she did actually come back and boast once she had stolen these things that she had made a substantial amount of cash. After which I discovered that it was actually not her jewelry she was talking about, it was mine. I never managed to get this jewelry back. It was gone after that. And I had actually never worn it because it was so special to me. I'd never removed it from the velvet case where it had been housed. I found the velvet case, but nothing in it. So, anyway, that was my friend Joe that I had met. After all those things, I did go off the rails. I did experience a few relationships, you know, as you do after a traumatic divorce, rape, etc. And my first husband did actually find out about this, and he slated me to the entire vicinity of Ambleside, after which I just had a terrible reputation there. And his woman, this American woman, did actually arrive in Ambleside after that, where they shared a life together for a couple of years. He did complete the divorce. He sent me a decree nisi eventually. It was a lovely experience because I was working in a backpackers at the time. I blubbed my eyes out when I got that. There was a nice guy there that did actually give me a hug, which was nice. I got through it. And thereafter, I met my second husband, Peter. The man arrived at the digs, the apple pie digs, bearing gifts and flowers. I did find this very strange, since he was 28 years my senior. He offered me a place to stay in a hut of a prior friend of mine who had passed away from cancer. And I stayed there for a couple of months. It was totally out in the sticks. I had to buy myself a bike to get to and from that place to the apple pie where I worked. It was hard work. The lights on my bike went out one night, and I almost got killed. Fortunately, I didn't, because I did actually, manage to drive past the guy, and he did actually see me. Thank God for that. And I did have enough basically to live on. My son did come and see me once or twice there, and I did manage to make him some nice, breakfast and food and what have you. It was quite nice to see him. He's always been around, my lad. He's never. We're quite close, really. And anyway, eventually, after staying at the hut for a couple of months, Peter did actually offer me a room in Queen's Cottage, which is on Slack, where all the trouble started. I did I rented this room for a while. I had my son staying with me. It was nice. I did have a place to bring my children at last. Um, Although the woman that had wrecked our home and nicked everything from me but the toilet paper to wipe my ass had actually her and my ex-husband had really begun the slating and the rumor throwing and etc. around Ambleside about me. So Ambleside really began to distrust and hate me at that point. Um, she, after having wrecked my children's home, refused to eat with them at the dining room table, I was told. Eventually, after the divorce had gone through, my ex married this woman from South Carolina, and they had a miscarriage to start off with, but then had a second child that was prenatal but survived, and he's still with them today, living in South Carolina. Apparently, he's a very nice lad, and I'm sure he probably is. My children, on the other hand, Jessica spent her life at that point living in a bubble. She kind of met these friends of hers online who were international and spent most of her life living in that bubble and never really socializing much. She did actually meet a chap at that point who eventually they ended the relationship, but he was a kind of stabilizer for her. But obviously my children were quite traumatized from that experience. My son did get into narcotics at age 16. He was shooting all kinds of things. It was not good. And he was doing this all behind my back. I had no clue what he was doing. This being because I had been diagnosed with a condition in South Africa, which actually was a false diagnosis. And I had been on antipsychotics for years. The antipsychotics had caused me to be considerably stoned for 35 years. And I of course, didn't actually suffer from the condition. Instead, I suffered a psychosis, which could have been cured in a couple of weeks. But I had a 35-year sentence of antipsychotics. I don't actually know how I managed to pitch up to work in the morning, but I did have the experience of not pitching up to work on the odd occasion where I would get the sack. So yes, I had plenty of jobs around Ambleside, which further decreased my reputation. And it just kind of went from there. After that, and having had my daughter taken off me for approximately 10 years, and my son, about 7 years, before which I had never actually been apart from these children, ever. I was quite traumatized after that. I did actually sit in front of a fire with a hot water bottle, pretending it was a baby for 3 months solid. Yes, then I was quite traumatized. The psych team did actually get me out of that though, and I am okay now. um, after that experience, that was when the shit really hit the fan. Because my landlord at the time, Peter Hodgson, did actually pressurize me into marriage financially. He did tell me that if I didn't actually make up my mind whether I wanted to marry him or not, after which, of course, I had told him 3 times I did not want to marry him because he was 28 years older than me. He did actually pressurize me into marriage. He did say that he would, that would be it if I gave him a negative answer, which would probably have meant that I would have been out on the streets again. As you do, with no job. So yeah, I signed the documents. I did get married to the man. It wasn't particularly the best experience in the world, I must admit. The sexual experiences were particularly difficult, since he used to kind of smack my head up against the base of the bed during these occasions. It wasn't particularly fantastic, I must admit. But hey, it's one of those things. During that time that I was married to this chap, I did try and escape the marriage on the odd occasion, since I didn't actually really want to sign the marriage document. Of course, he had plenty of influence in the local church, and they did actually come down on me like a ton of bricks every time I did that. So I didn't really have a cat in hell's chance of getting out of that relationship at the time. Of course, being stoned on antipsychotics as well, that didn't really help much. And then all the shit really started, because after my reputation had been totally annihilated, it got worse. Because some images, illegal, explicit images at that point had been taken of me. I do know this because of the reaction from the general public. One day, everything was normal, and the next day, the entire town erupted in insults, which followed thereafter every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. For years, 15, in fact. In fact, they just escalated, with time. People just called me whore, bitch, cow, everything under the sun. Everything I did was never good enough. It was always slated to the ground. I had a fun time, I must admit. There were people that used to gather in the parking lots at night and use my son as a kind of mascot to kind of draw me into these kind of, traps. They'd pretend that he had committed suicide, he was in a cold truck, etc. All these little kind of diversions. I did end up one night walking on the streets of Ambleside barefoot, cutting my feet to ribbons, looking for my son. This used to be a regular occurrence, and obviously one of notable entertainment for them. culminating, of course, with people parking their cars outside my house. My house, virtually being on the streets of Ambleside. They used to park their cars there and just verbally abuse me all night on their car microphones. They were like queuing up to do that. On a kind of nightly basis. During that 15-year period, there were all kinds of things that happened. People came into my house and attempted to break my washing machines, my various appliances, all sorts of kind of electrical items which I had to replace. They were expensive. In fact, I gave up replacing them. In the end, I just repaired them myself. I tried phoning the guarantee people, the insurance, and they always had some excuse not to come out. So, I just had to manually repair those things. I did it over and over again. Now I know how a washing machine works inside and out. And frankly, I could repair them with my eyes shut. Also, I could repair various other appliances with my eyes shut, since I did it on a regular basis. I used to go online, look for the parts, and replace them. In fact, I have an entire list of the things that happened to me during that period. If I can actually locate that list, I'll read it to you. Here we go. Okay. All right. Also, people did actually damage Peter's car as well on a regular basis. That was quite frequent. From various, key kind of things, dragging the key down the car to manually, like messing around with the car battery, etc. A lot of that going on. Yeah, if I can actually find that first page, I will actually read this to you. Excuse me.